We are here with immediate past Rotary International Director John Blount, who was kind enough to stay after the District 5260 Foundation Holiday Luncheon and Gala to hang out with us, take a later flight home. John, welcome to beautiful Burbank.
Thank you.
We want to talk to you first of all about your experience in Rotary yourself on the way to becoming a director. I recall that you joined Rotary relatively young, at age 27. How did that come about?
You just weren't listening during my speech, obviously.
I was, but the computer wasn't, see, and...
I just got introduced to Rotary when I moved to a new town. My brother-in-law had been in Rotary, and he said, "You need to join this organization." And I didn't know anybody in the town or in the area. Got involved, mostly probably a fair part just to fit into town, to get to know people in town. Friendship base seemed like it might be a good way to build my business. I was a new young dentist starting a new practice, so it just it was a way to become involved in the community, both socially and service-wise, in a new location for me. So that was essentially it. I was young only because I was young in business. Interestingly, in those days, that was 1977, shows my age, and they were blocking me from coming in because they already had a couple of dentists, and I had not been in town and proven myself to be successful. I was kind of a risk for them, and there were several in the club didn't want me in the club, but I won out. I got in. It's worked out okay so far.
So far.
Yeah.
So after you were in the Rotary Club, at some point, not too long after, you must have done the proverbial miss a meeting and became president. How long did that take?
It took 4 years. I was young. I was the next youngest person to me in the club was 7 years older than I was, and the next youngest person then was probably 25 years older. So it was a transition time for our club. Our club was chartered in 1925 in this small town in Sebastopol. And we made jokes that there were charter members in the club, but it really, they'd done some great stuff, but they were tired and they were older. And we started bringing in our friends. So we made the club younger very, very quickly. 4 years into it, for whatever reason, and we could go into that if you want, but I was invited to be president of the club. And I never hesitated. It seemed like this would be fun. This would be a great opportunity to be fun. I would enjoy doing this. It was a kind of a statement from your peers that they thought you'd be a good leader, and I was gung-ho to do that.
And you went on from there and eventually served as district governor in that area.
Yeah.
Interesting year's experience.
Being a district governor was an experience hard to replicate. You meet so many. Rotary's usually about the people, and you just expand this base of people that want to work in their community, are fun to be around. You like socializing with them. They became your peer group. On the other hand, I'm a dentist. You go to a dental convention and it's pretty boring. You're talking about your last crown margin, and in Rotary it was diverse people. It was almost therapeutic because everybody had a sense of business, but it was always just a couple of degrees different from yours, which would be really helpful. And when you were having problems, they could see things that you couldn't see. And so going to Rotary every week was socially fun, was good for your psyche. It was just all rolled into it. When I was governor, it was more and more the same. Learned a lot of things about how it made me a better businessman. I became a better manager, a better delegator, and then working with all these amazing people to accomplish things. Somebody asked me once, you're 39 years old and you're donating 2 years plus of your life to being a governor of a Rotary organization. Why would you do that? You're in the prime, should be in the prime of your practice. And my answer to them was, I have the opportunity to set the pace for 2,600 leaders in communities in my district. Why wouldn't I do that? I mean, that seems like a no-brainer to me. People will listen to you. They'll act on your ideas. Why wouldn't I do that? And that was in case what happened. People reacted to my ideas. We tried to push Rotary clubs to become more involved with education in their communities. We had the 4 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic, and Rotary, and just tried to get Rotarians more involved in local education. So people followed. It was a great experience. Yeah, I changed my life.
At the conclusion of your year as district governor, you then began, probably without realizing it, on a path that ended up, I'm trying to calculate this in my head, about 18 years later, you became one of the 17 members of the Rotary International Board of Directors. What was your Rotary experience beyond the club level during that intervening period leading to your becoming a director?
Typically, past district governor will go through certain chairs in their district because of their position. They'll become finance chair and nominating committee chair and things like that. So I did the expected chairs, but I got involved internationally more. I seem to come up through the ranks in education and training leadership. So I started working heavily at President-elect Training Seminar, PETS. In Northern California, it's called Far West PETS. 9 districts, 425 presidents. I started training governors. Believe it or not, governors are trained.
When did that start?
Yeah, I know. It comes as a shock to people. Okay. But started working on GETS, Governors-elect Training Seminar. So I trained at the international level. We have something called the International Assembly, where we bring all the governors from around the world together. And I was an instructor there for a couple of years. So I came up to the board really through the pathway of education and training, leadership training.
How is a director chosen for the board?
So basically there's 34 zones of Rotary around the world, and most zones are paired, so it's 2 zones for 1 director, and the directorship passes from one zone to the next and then back and forth, alternates. Each zone has a nominating committee made up of 1 person from each district, has to be a past district governor, elected at the district conference, and they sit as a nominating committee and interview you, and then make the nomination. And then your name goes to publication, and if anybody wants to challenge it, they can. And at some point there's a vote if you're challenged. I wasn't challenged, so there was no vote. So I was nominated. So.
And at that point, at what point you became the director on July 1st, 2009?
That's correct.
To begin a 2-year term on that July through June Rotary year. So
correct.
At what point were you selected that you knew you would be taking office as the director as of July 1st, 2009?
Just the deadline for challenging was December 1, 2007. Yeah.
So it's a full year and a half out.
Yeah, it's a year and a half build up.
Do you get any specific training prior to your becoming a director as well?
We do a board orientation. It's not really training.
Because by then you know everything.
Yeah, or you don't know what you don't know. I don't know. But we have I think we had a 3-day orientation session in Evanston, where our headquarters are, and it was beneficial. They would bring in all of our general managers, and each would give us an overview of their job in the organization.
These are the general managers of
their
Rotary
staff.
International.
Yeah, staff. Yeah. So I enjoyed it. It was lengthy, and I know there was a lot of incoming directors that weren't particularly pleased with it. It was like going to school again. But I enjoyed it. We got to dialogue with staff, question them on some areas that we thought we should head into, and I served on and we'll probably talk about this, a very energetic board, kind of a transitional board for our organization. A lot of younger members of the board, and when I say that, several of us laugh. I'm looked at as a young board of director. I'm 61 years old. Only in Rotary can you be considered young at 61. But there was a lot of energy for change on this board, and so that orientation period became a challenging dialogue between us and staff on doing things different or differently. And I think staff really raised their level to that because we're set to challenge the status quo.
let's go there. Let's talk about your board. You take office on July 1st, 2009. How often does the board meet physically? I mean, obviously, when the board started many years ago, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have Skype. You're still meeting physically as a board. How often?
We meet 4 times a year. Not always in Evanston, but we meet 4 times a year minimal. And really, that's about all you meet. You meet in committees more often than that, but not the whole board. The whole board meets 4 times a year.
When the whole board meets, who presides over the meeting? The RI president?
Yes, the president presides.
Who was your first president?
My first president was John Kenny from Scotland. And the vice president was Eric Adamson, from a lawyer from Virginia. And it was very formal and kind of a typical board meeting where there was a lot of formality and not as much interchange of ideas, although some, but pretty formal legislative type board of directors, corporate board of directors.
And then your second president?
Ray Klingensmith from Missouri, 50 years in Rotary, incredible historical perspective on the organization, also a lawyer.
My condolences again.
Yeah, exactly. So was John Kenny, was a lawyer. So I worked under 2 lawyers. And his Ray's vice president was Tom Thorfinson, also a lawyer. So man, we were outdone with the law. But
when we say it's like pulling teeth, though, you know what that means. So we're even.
It's much easier pulling teeth, actually.
Yes.
But anyway, the second year was much more exchange of ideas, more philosophical, less legislative, just idea-oriented, imagination-oriented, and really dealing with where we are in the organization right now and how we need to change, basically.
Were there prime focuses that either president brought to the situation? Was there something that was in particular grabbing John Kenny that he wanted to pursue during his year with the board, and the same for President Ray?
I think John was focused a lot on membership. He was concerned in how we were raising members, how we were bringing in members, and how we were retaining them. And that was more of his focus. His theme was the future of Rotary's in your hands, or basically, he was trying to drive it down to the grassroots. But his focus was more to just make sure we got all the rules right. And so we did spend a great deal of time on what some of us felt was just rearranging chairs, and we needed to get into the meat of things. To some extent, if the board doesn't show imaginative leadership, then it creates a void. So somebody fills that void, and they may not have the same perspective as the people sitting around that table have. And I think that's something that we are learning as an organization, that the board of directors has got to be energetic in their ideas and in the strategic direction that they want the organization heading.
How much influence do you feel your board of directors had, and the current one has, over the Rotary Club, which is thought to be autonomous? We're all autonomous Rotary clubs as long as we follow the Constitution. We have bylaws that pass muster. But then we do have RI. To what extent do you, as a board, control what activities a club should or shouldn't do?
It's interesting. The best way I can answer that probably is to give you an illustration, and it comes from a speech I've been giving off and on for the last 3 or 4 years. As a member of the board of directors of Rotary International, I felt very quickly that I actually was a member of 2 boards. I had 2 hats. The first hat was as a director on the Association of Rotary Clubs, which was, by the way, the first title of our board of directors, the Association of Rotary Clubs. And that hat was, just as you say, the coalescence of the ideas and the necessities for Rotary clubs to flourish. So your decision making was based on individual Rotary clubs that had a certain amount of autonomy, to make sure that we flourished. We grew, we acted similarly throughout the world, all of those things. And then the second organization that I was a director of was basically corporate Rotary, Rotary International. And what we have the ability to do as one body, 1.22 million Rotarians around the world. And the obvious example of that is polio. So decision making sometimes was very, very different because it depended on what hat you had on. Were you working on behalf of the Association of Rotary Clubs, or as Rotary International, corporate Rotary, moving this big giant, global giant, into directions that have the most impact? So how does that relate to an individual Rotary Club? I think that our decisions are such to make sure that you're healthy, that we thrive. You know, we have one of the things that happened during John Kenny's year was that we established and started the direction on a new strategic plan. Organizationally, we started strategic planning a decade or so ago, and it transitions every 3 years. We do a review of it and a recycling of it. And some say that's too long a period of time. But we're becoming more and more serious in how we structure that. And we're in a rejuvenation of the strategic plan in 2009. And I think that we became more serious and more competent in the strategy of the organization. Our strategic plan basically was reduced from 7 kind of nebulous topics that you could guess what they were, you know, membership increase and vocational service and all of that. And it got down to 3 things. And one was help Rotary clubs thrive. Do whatever you need to do. And in some situations, that's get out of their way. So that's the third of the strategic plan. The second strategic part of the strategic plan is to try and focus our service as a corporate organization more. And so we picked 6 areas of focus plus youth, the 6 areas that the foundation has plus youth. And so we're trying to resource just those areas of our organization and throw away the 19 programs we had. And not throw them away, but don't resource them anymore. Don't put any of our capital towards them. Rotary clubs want to do them? Fine. Rotary clubs are autonomous to do them. We don't have to fund senior housing. And then the third area is increase our public image. And so we became very realistic with, here's our plan, here's what we have to do, and in some situations that means pulling rules back from Rotary clubs that are outdated and doing whatever possible to help these clubs thrive. And we're still in the midst of that. I'm not sure that we all know exactly what that means yet, but I think we're making some headway on it.
Now, mechanically, you're talking about a board of directors of 17 people, plus the participation of the vice president and the president of RI, in multiple different languages. And so not everybody speaks English, although there are many zones that do speak English. I'm not sure that coming from Missouri, Ray Klingensmith spoke English, and I heard John Kenny speak, and I'm sure that was close. How does the mechanical board process work under those conditions?
It's a great question. It's a great thing to explore. It's a mini United Nations. Basically, you sit at this board table, 17 of us plus the president and the president-elect, so 19 people. It's a beautiful building. We own an 18-story building in Evanston, which is a beautiful suburb of Chicago. The boardroom looks out over Lake Michigan. It's gorgeous. There's half a dozen translator booths that are kind of up behind you on the board, behind smoked glass, so you don't see them. We've got a fairly high-tech system, and so translation comes over speakers to you all the time. We have headphones that when someone in a foreign language is speaking or listening, they have headphones on. So it's an interesting environment physically. As you might imagine, that process is very slow. Keep in mind that the conduit for everything is English. So we don't, for instance, have a Portuguese translator that translates into Japanese. We have a Portuguese translator that translates into English. The Japanese translator picks that up in English and translates it to the Japanese or to whoever, to their language. So everything is through a conduit, and English is that conduit. So it's slow. And a lot of times the directors that don't speak English, their comments will be one person off because they're just now getting the translation and responding to it. And so you have to always keep that in mind. I'm speaking very fast right now. This would work very poorly at the board. You have to make your point very succinctly and slowly and wait for reaction from people. And in fact, with important decisions, not that we had unimportant decisions, but decisions that were very, very precise, it wouldn't be a bad idea to type it out beforehand and give it to the translators, that this is what I'm going to be saying. There were occasions when I did that, when I wanted to make sure that they had a chance to review everything that I was saying and be very precise with it. We did, the first year we had more non-English speakers, and so it went even slower. The second year, we almost everyone around that table spoke English with the exception of Kyo from Korea and Masa from Japan. We had two Masas from Japan, and neither of them spoke English at all, really. But we had a gentleman from Brazil spoke Portuguese, but he spoke English well. We had a gentleman from Germany spoke English very, very well. Although when we would go out afterwards, he would say, I just miss so much. You know, you think I speak English better than I do, but I have to think about it in German or in French or Italian.
Doing your own translation in your head.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything. A lot of work. If you're meeting 4 times a year, there must be work being done in committees. What committees were you part of, and how much of the work was done in committee in your case?
Well, different from year to year. First year I was liaison to a training committee, and frankly I don't think that there was a lot of work done in that committee the first year. I was on a board committee that was programs, and that committee we would meet prior to board meetings, and program materials would be proposals would be fronted to us first, and so a smaller committee would deal with that. There was an administrative committee, an audit committee, and a program committee. And it's better because you got a smaller group, but you still have the language problem. So then you can bring a committee action to the board rather than the proposal to the board from wherever it was coming from, which could be anywhere. So the committee's going to make some recommendations. They maybe change some of the original proposal, and so the board gets to kind of see something that's been winnowed down a little bit. The second year, I was chairman of our executive committee, and like most organizations, we have the ability for the executive committee to act on behalf of the board from time to time. One additional thing is our executive committee is, by our bylaws, our personnel committee. So I became chair of our search committee because we replaced our general secretary in 2010-11. So I've spent a large amount of time on that. I don't know, probably a couple hundred hours maybe. Big event, big endeavor. We were replacing a general secretary that we'd had for 11 years, and that search was interesting and all-inclusive and very international in basis, and then negotiating the contract and then onboarding the person and changing the structure of our organization to accommodate a little different approach to our general secretary. I could talk for hours about this, and it was a demanding but very rewarding experience on that committee. I was on a couple other committees too, but that really was the focus of my work.
We don't have a lot of time left, so one last important question for you. When a Rotary Club president finishes his or her term, they sleep for about a week. When a district governor finishes his or her term, they sleep for about a month. You served 2 years on the RI board, and you were finished as of June 30th this year. How long did you sleep?
I don't think I sleep a whole lot. We use our past directors pretty, we rely on them a lot. So I'm chair of a couple of committees, and they tend to be committees that demand some work, a fair amount of work. We have a standing committee called the Communications Committee, And it's kind of the strategic volunteer aspect of communications, and our communications division includes marketing, public relations, translation, the Rotarian, print media, video production. There's 8 sections: archives, public relations, and so all of those things we're advising the staff on and recommending to the board. It's taking a fair amount of time. We're in a substantial number of initiatives right now to change how Rotary communicates. A third of our strategic plan is enhancing our public image. Much of that is communications, external and internal. So I've been back to Evanston, I don't know, 5 times since June. I tend to drop into Evanston like I used to drop into LA from San Francisco, you know.
Or your dental office.
Or my dental office. So yeah, I haven't had a whole lot of chance to catch my breath yet, but it's a good place. I fit in this committee. I like it. It's a 6-person committee from around the world: India, Argentina, Canada, and a couple U.S. And we're, I think, doing some things right now that I have Rotarians look forward to happening in the next 2 years. So.
Well, you'd said beforehand that you'd be able to talk about this stuff for 4 hours, and I'd like to hear it. You have to catch a flight, and my Rotary Club will kill me if I let us go too much longer.
You won't have a Rotary Club.
And you, of course, are a past district governor, so
I could go forever.
Without the directorship, I think the tape's going to break, and it's digital. John Blount, thank you for your time with our new Rotary E-Club of the Greater San Fernando Valley, and you may get a knock on your dental office so we can do some more of this and learn some more.
Sounds good. Thank you.
John.